Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for sharing your time with us today. I've got a lot to cover. It's been quite a while since I spoke to the community. We have been working incredibly hard around the clock to get a lot done, much of which is not visible to the community, but I can assure you that there's been a massive lift been going on across the platform, and I'm going to share a lot of that with you today. 4 pages of typed outline to speak to, which I hope I'll get through in 30 or 40 minutes, and then leave some time for Q&A. As always, start the AMA with the information I'm providing you with is not financial information, nothing that you should be relying on. Make your own decisions around how you choose to invest in this game. And with that, why don't we get started? So I'm going to start by, today is the 26th of October. It's the day before our yearling reveal, the delivery of our yearlings, which we are so excited about. Really the culmination of the game, or the next stage in the game, which I'll talk a little bit more about later on. But I'd like to really just recap, where we are and how we got here, and talk a little bit about what's coming behind the reveal. So let's start with where we came from. All of you will recall that on April 27th, we opened our first product offering, the Silx Genesis Avatar Mint. That's literally tomorrow will be exactly 6 months from the day that we dropped our avatar. So our avatars dropped on April 27th. 6 months later, our yearlings will be delivered. After the avatar drop, we offered the Skyfalls. We introduced Skyfalls and offered the claim, which began the process of starting to develop the metaverse assets. That was followed by a second mint of the avatars, Mint 2, followed by the yearling mint, and we're about to embark on the yearling reveal, which is the delivery of the horses, and that happens tomorrow. Now, what's going to happen is once you start getting and revealing your yearlings, there's going to be a whole new layer of activity that's going to take place. The beginnings of pinhooking, the beginnings of fractionalization, syndication, formation of communities. We know some of that has happened off-platform, and we're hopeful that that stuff will migrate to the platform very soon. What's coming up with the delivery of the MVP, which is going to come right behind the metaverse. So let me start by talking about that functionality over the course of the next two groupings of sprints. The MVP, which we had contemplated being delivered at the end of October, is running just a little bit late. We're probably 4 or 5 weeks behind in terms of all the Q&A needed to finalize everything and to be able to release it to our community. Included in the MVP will be the land map, your ability to actually convert your Skyfalls parcels into real parcels of land that are contiguous, that are going to form your farm, the development of your farm, the strategic speculative game around land, the ability to visit your property, the ability for you to engage in stabling, create functionality for your farm, the ability to fractionalize your horse and begin to syndicate, to create syndication groups. And at the heart, at the center of all of this, is going to be a fully functional marketplace that will create a much richer and more holistic experience when you are interacting with your assets, whether it be transactionally or whether it's just to interact with them. Whether you're visiting your farm, whether you're interacting with other players, looking at your assets, manipulating your assets, things like that. And then wrapped on top of the metaverse is going to be a fully functional portal that will give you visibility into a ton of stuff relating to the game, relating to gameplay, social tools, information tools that are going to push all kinds of data from within the platform, etc. That is all being worked on. And like I said, we're running about 4 to 5 weeks late on that. We're anticipating being able to release the MVP, or the beta of the metaverse, in the first week, sometime in the at the end of the first week of December, and that's kind of where we stand right now. We've been working very closely with both an internal team as well as external teams of vendors that have been supporting us, and we feel pretty confident about where we are right now. And I just came out of a demo, which is quite spectacular, and super excited for you guys to experience a lot of this. I'll share a little bit about what's going to happen behind the release of the MVP. I'll call that Metaverse Phase 2. I can't give you an exact time, but I think it's going to be around, it'll be rolling releases, probably taking place over a 3-month period. This is all going to happen before any racing takes place. We're going to work very diligent towards kind of standardizing the on-ramp of our platform to be much more seamless to a Web 2 audience, so that people that are unfamiliar with Web 3, MetaMask, crypto will be able to onboard seamlessly. That's a big initiative for us to really create scale and adoption within the game. We are going to be building all of the oracles and APIs that are going to grab and aggregate the data necessary for everybody to really play the game, and for the game to automate and function through the smart contracts. All of the racing and prize purse smart contracts will have been developed and implemented in that phase. The ability to transverse the metaverse. So initially, when you first enter the metaverse, you'll be able to visit specific locations. So for example, if you have a farm and a stable, you'll be able to visit that farm, but you won't be able to transverse on day one within the metaverse to other locations. You'll have to port to them, and so we'll be introducing that. Tons of analytical tools that will give you instant data and help you really in understanding what's going on. So think about price movements of horses, what horses have realized the greatest appreciation and value in the last week, which ones were the most crushed in value, so that you can begin to look for value, you can begin to look for opportunity. We're going to be building a lot of analytical tools that will provide you at your fingertips with incredible research that has never really been available in the horse racing industry before, that will allow you to really play this game in an environment that empowers everybody with incredible information. And a whole content portal that will wrap around that as well. I'll be talking later on this AMA a little bit about content and a team that we're developing that's going to literally produce tremendous data and tremendous information that is specific to our game, and that tells the stories that are happening in real life through the lens of Game of Silks. So very excited about that, and I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. So that's a look ahead at the next 30 days, and then probably the next 120 days behind the horse reveal. I'd like to recap kind of what our achievements have been over the course of the last 6 months. You know, when we look at Web3, and everybody looks at how the cryptocurrency market and the NFTs have been crushed, I've talked about this in prior AMAs. If you actually look at the fundamental data underlying Web3, it's unprecedented. Web3 adoption is growing by leaps and bounds. The number of nodes, the number of transactions, the volume of hashes, the core indicators, the key performance indicators that are driving Web3 are higher and more successful than they've ever been. And all the public looks at is the price of ETH or the price of Bitcoin or other tokens. But you really have to look under the hood. And so I just kind of like to recap where we are so people can truly appreciate the value of what we've all created collectively over the course of a very short period of time. From the launch of our first asset 6 months ago tomorrow to today, we've built an incredibly strong team that's probably 50 plus people deep right now. We've built an incredibly vibrant engaging and loyal online community of over 20,000 people. We've built a foundational community, so a strong player base to launch this game. Today we have over 4,600 wallets that own our in-game assets. These wallets have purchased over 15,000 unique assets. That's quite incredible in a short period of time. The revenue that was generated from the primary sale of these assets to date in 6 months exceeds $4.5 million. That money, all the revenue that comes in addition to the money that we've raised in advance, is being used to build the platform and to empower the platform to be able to generate the rewards, prize money, and just grease the economy that's going to operate this platform. That is an incredibly successful journey over a 6-month period. The secondary market volume, so the community's trading volume in dollars over the last 6 months, was over $1.6 million. So in the aggregate between the primary and secondary market, there's been over $6 million in volume that has been generated in a 6-month period. That's $1 million a month. That's an astronomical amount of volume of business that demonstrates strong loyalty, passion, and interest from this community, and is, very close to unprecedented in a game that's literally just come out of the ground. And mind you, let me actually go through a few other statistics. So OpenSea rank, all-time sports projects on the Ethereum blockchain, we're still number 12. I predict that we will be in the top 10 in the course of the next 30 to 45 days. Here are some other really incredible data that may have been lost by the community. So on an ETH over ETH basis, and I haven't looked at what Ethereum is trading at the moment, but it was at around $1,500 and kind of broke through. It's approaching $1,600 right now. So we're beginning to see a resurgence, and I think that's really good for our platform and for the overall Web3 market. But on an ETH over ETH basis, as of yesterday, our combination of our Avatar and Skyfalls were at 0.41 on the floor, 0.55 if you looked at the average. And if you just look at the floor against the mint price 6 months ago, you would have achieved 167% return on your investment if you bought the Avatar at mint and you held it with the Skyfalls claim to date. On an annualized basis, that's 333%. I just want you to digest that information, okay? To play a high-risk game in which you became a committed member of this community and have achieved these kind of returns is quite spectacular for all of us, and it's just the beginning. The dollar over dollar return, surprisingly, is actually quite spectacular as well. It's about 37% dollar over dollar based on our floor, our combined floor today, and on an annualized basis, that's 83%. So again, quite a spectacular return despite the inflationary environment that we currently are living in. And the yearlings, which if you participated in the first 4-day mint, are up 23% in approximately a month and change or so off of the floor. So really nice to see the value of where the assets are today relative to where they started. In the big picture, they don't mean anything right now, so I'm going to stress that. But I'm really bringing this to everybody's attention because not everybody does the math. People just look at the trading floor relative to what it traded at yesterday. These are very volatile assets, and the value is going to be driven by the community and by people entering the community that have certain perceptions. Remember that you're looking at things from one vantage point. We look at it from a different vantage point. Our optimism comes from both the black and white data that we're looking at, but more importantly, the things behind the scenes that you haven't seen yet that are going to start coming to fruition. And, there's a lot of that's going to be taking place over the course of the next 30 to 60 days, which we're super excited about. All of the data that I just shared with you needs to be measured against a benchmark, and that benchmark is the NFT market, which is down over 50% over the same period of time. So if you look at the delta between where we're trading at and where the rest of the market is trading at, it's like literally a tale of two cities. It's night and day. And that is a testament, a 100% testament to the community. The community is what is supporting the project. The community, by definition, represents a greater value than the individual. So the sum is greater than the individual inputs, which creates the value for all of us. And remember, all of this data, right? All of this success that we've achieved in this very short period of time is before any game has been launched, right? We've been literally socializing, trading, and developing in an environment where there isn't a game yet. And that game is about to launch. And so once that happens, we're going to be in a different stratosphere. And I can't tell you how excited we all are for that moment. And it's right around the corner. Okay, so that's a recap on the last 6 months. I hope that was helpful for everybody. And now I'd like to jump into more specific data points. So I'm going to start with marketing. I know there's been a lot of commentary around marketing. And again, that commentary comes from your vantage points. We look at things very differently. I can assure you that every move that we make is a calculated move that is designed to serve the interests of the platform and the community and the company in a manner that considers everything that's going on, including the market environment, including our capabilities, including our future plans, including things that may not be publicly available for you to understand at this point. So I'll preface that and then just jump into marketing. So I'm excited to announce that we have a new CMO who started on Monday. His name is Casey Dickinson, and you can look him up on LinkedIn. His last name is spelled Dickinson. But I'm going to tell you just a little bit about him, and I'm going to tell you that he will be hosting an AMA probably next week to introduce himself to the community, to talk a little bit about himself, his plans, and really to just have a powwow around marketing, which I think you guys will be really excited about. Casey is a veteran in the gaming industry. He's worked deeply in free-to-play games and in massive multiplayer online games. His career spans marketing, production, and executive leadership in the gaming community. He's been at the forefront of the industry across all recent major disruptions, so digital distribution, free-to-play, mobile, and now blockchain. And this is kind of really, I think, a great testament to his background. For those of you that are gamers, you'll appreciate this. He's personally been involved in the launch of dozens of titles for some of the largest gaming companies in the world, including Sony Online, Red Storm Entertainment, which is Ubisoft, FTX Games, and most recently Tilting Point. Casey has worked on some of the top franchises in PC, console, social, and mobile gaming, including EverQuest, Ghost Recon, The Hunger Games, Narcos, The Walking Dead, and Star Trek. So that's a little bit about Casey. Needless to say, he's a veteran in gaming marketing, and he's come on to lead this company in marketing and lead the department. We're super excited to have him, and we're super excited for you to meet him hopefully next week. He's going to take a little bit of time to get onboarded this week. He's deep diving and will be incredibly productive over the coming weeks. So that's the first announcement in marketing. The second announcement is everybody knows we've launched a marketing promotion in anticipation of the start of the game. And that is kind of in a what I'll call a beta mode right now. So our goal is to provide an easy on-ramp for people that discover our game, that want to become a part of our game as we launch. What I can tell you is once the game launches, the volume of activity is going to surge because we're finally going to have something that people can literally turn on and play with right out of the gate. And so we need to be prepared for that. We also have some major developments that are in the pipeline that will be announced very soon. And all of this promotional structure around the reopening of the Avatar Mint is tied to all of that. So We're just kind of dipping our toes in it right now and getting ready for what's about to come. And I will describe it as the calm before the storm. So I know everybody's a little antsy about our calmness, but we're very confident in what we're doing. Like I said, we have a lot of information that you don't have, and we're just getting ready for what we believe is going to be a very significant surge in the community and in the activity within the game. And that is going to happen over the course of the next several weeks. There's a tremendous amount of very exciting things behind the scenes that we're chomping at the bit to disclose as soon as we're able to do that. I personally read all of, I'm on Discord. When I have a moment, I'll recap the day. So I make sure to try to at least skim the activity. I interact with the community managers and with internal people on the team to respond to things that I think the community is elevating. So I'm aware of really everything that's going on, the sentiment within the community, the questions, the concerns, and we don't operate in a vacuum. So we're very much aware of it. And if we're not responding to it, it's because we don't believe it's necessary to respond to, because you will discover that it's going to be a moot issue and that your concerns are going to be essentially answered, and you will discover that had you seen the big picture, you would have understood that it's nothing to be concerned about. So very optimistic about where we are. I think we're in an incredible place. We'll never get everything right. That's the nature of being in a startup environment. But if we get most everything right, we're in a good place, and I think we're in an incredibly great place right now. That's really kind of what I have to say about the landscape on the marketing side. The last thing that I'm going to talk about in marketing is content. We've just hired an incredible resource to run our content, to head our content. His name is Nick Fortuna. He comes out of the horse racing industry. He had a senior role at Daily Racing Form. He writes as well for lots of very prominent financial papers, including Barron's. And his responsibility is going to be to develop a team of people, both internally and externally, that are going to provide us nonstop with content related to our game. So if any of you play fantasy football or fantasy sports, you'll know, or just you're just a fan in general of sports, you'll know that content is critical to a game, especially in fantasy, where you're trying to figure out, who am I going to start, who am I going to draft, who am I going to take off the waiver wire, who am I going to trade, who am I going to drop. And on any given week or in any given day, there is tons of data out there that can help you make those decisions. If we had to do the research ourselves, it would consume an enormous amount of time. And so we rely on experts to do that. And what we're going to do is create internally a team of experts that are going to provide the community with massive amounts of data and thoughtful information and analytics to help you understand what's going on in the world and make decisions with ease, so that if you choose to spend 10 hours a week researching, you can do that. But if you only have an hour or a half an hour and you want to figure out, what horses do I want to look at to buy, who's racing next week, who raced last week, what were the surprises, who are the sleepers, can you rank the top yearlings that are for sale right now? Things like that. We're going to have literally columns that are regular columns that are going to get published, op-eds, all kinds of things. And they're not just going to they're not going to just look at our game through the lens of the horses. They're also going to look at our game through the lens of the owners. So writers are going to be looking at the farms. They're going to be looking at the syndicates. They're going to be looking at the activity that takes place within our industry. Remember, we are an independent economy pegged to the real economy. But what goes on in Game of Silks, in our metaverse, is going on in a universe of its own. And so having content that is delivered in the context of our world is going to create incredible engagement and make this game, amplify the fun of this game to a new level where we're all going to be principals in our world. And so don't be surprised if somebody decides to profile your stable or your syndicate or a transaction that you engaged in and write an article about it. And that's going to happen. So you'll get a chance to meet Nick in the coming weeks. And he's in the process of starting to develop a path and a strategy for how he's going to build all of this. And this is going to come to life starting fairly quickly. So you're going to start seeing content being published outside of the metaverse. And once the metaverse goes live, this is all going to be integrated into our platform and delivered in a variety of different ways that are going to be very easy to access. Okay. That's what I have to say about marketing. Let's talk a little bit about some of the things that are coming. Okay. Until now, we've just been building a community around the trading of assets. Beginning tomorrow, with the delivery of the yearlings, the game moves into a very new phase, right? So we've had avatars, we have land, and now we have yearlings. The horses are at the center of the game, right? Everything revolves around the horses if you choose to play the game that way. And with the delivery of the horses will come significant activity and significant engagement. This is the point in the game in which we start beginning to integrate strategy around the horses. And so there's going to be a lot of education that's going to be imparted to the community. We're going to be doing a lot of really fun things that are going to create engagement and create content for the external world to begin to look into our world as well. And that's going to include live auctions. It's going to include education around bloodlines, education around, understanding the data points that make up the yearlings. We're going to literally try to dummy down as much of the complexity and mystery that exists in horse racing today, again, to create accessibility for the masses and to educate all of us. When you look at, I remember that when I first looked at fantasy sports, it was very difficult for me to understand everything and digest everything. Today, having played fantasy football for a long time, I've been able to do that, and it's rote for me. When it comes to horse racing, the first time I looked at a pedigree sheet, it was Chinese to me, and now I know how to read it, and that's partly through education. So we're going to be doing a lot of that. And once we launch the game, you're going to begin to see a viral impact that will start attracting a significant amount of people from outside of our community, from within the horse community, from outside the horse community. So we'll see a lot of that, and I'm very excited about it. And that's going to come with the MVP. There was a lot of commentary. There's been a lot of communication around the economy, and I decided that I'm going to allocate the balance of this AMA and close out with talking about the economy, providing some additional clarity to those that are still confused, and hopefully clarify things for people that are still unclear about how things work. So, and provide some context as well in terms of the economics. Now, I would refer all of you to a prior AMA that I did that's recorded that actually does a comprehensive microeconomic analysis of how things operate using some very kind of theoretical data points, but I'm going to try to provide more granularity today. So I'm going to start with, because I've heard this a little bit in the community, around the notion of the decentralized autonomous organization. So for clarity, and I'm going to say this and refer you back to the AMA, several months ago, we decided that we were going to shift from a DAO model to a more traditional liquid platform with cash prizes. So to be clear to the community, we are not a DAO at the moment, and our intention is to operate as a traditional gaming platform for the foreseeable future. And the reason for that was fourfold, and I'll recap that. The drivers were: one, the regulatory environment. We were counseled that the regulatory environment within a DAO structure could create some challenges for the company, and it would be easier to extract that in the beginning when we launched the game. So that was the first reason for modifying the economy. The second reason was the complexity. Trying to explain to people that they are earning tokens and that those tokens are going to be valuable in the future, and this is the reason they're going to be valuable, makes it very difficult to onboard a mass market audience. And so the determination was to simplify the communications around the model, that we would move to a very simple economy in which you received cash that was liquid when you win rewards that can be literally, if you want to, taken right out of the game. And so I don't have to explain all of the complications around a fairly complex economy tied to a native token. The third reason was volatility. The reality is that if you're using a token, or in our case, two tokens, the SLK and the STT tokens that were contemplated in the original model, those tokens can be volatile. And we've seen that take place in a variety of games. And so the problem with that is that the assets then become volatile as well, because you don't know what the value of what you're playing for is going to be. So to prevent that volatility from taking place, we decided to move to a cash model. Now, when I say a cash model, currently we're building this on the Ethereum blockchain, and whether it's ETH or whether it's a layer 2 token that creates a more efficient way to transfer and a less costly way to transfer the currency, it will be something like that at launch. And then eventually our goal is to explore moving to a completely cash model in which if you choose to, you don't have to deal with cryptocurrency, even though the entire back end of this platform is going to be blockchain. So I want to be very clear with you on that. The fourth and final reason we shifted to a more liquid model is because of the immaturity of the DAO model and the fact that there isn't a single example of a game at scale that has been successful using a proprietary native token in a DAO structure. So rather than be the first one to try to prove that, we decided that we're going to do it much more easily, take out all of these risks, and launch the game as a traditional cash gaming platform, which is where we're at right now. And I'll explain a little bit more about that as we go through this. The new economy operates more efficiently and provides instant liquidity. That's a huge benefit for everybody. And the liquid model has been proven by companies that are in our space. We have determined that we operate squarely within the blockchain fantasy gaming, sports gaming space, because our game operates as a derivative of the real world, and it is in the sports category. And there are multiple examples of that. Two companies in particular that I've talked about in the past. A company called Sorare, that's about 3.5 years old, that launched in European soccer and is now in Major League Baseball and the NBA. And DraftKings, which launched Rainmakers, which is the Sorare equivalent or almost equivalent in the NFL. Both of those games operate on a cash basis. They publish the contests every week that you can enter into with your cards, with your NFTs that you form lineups with, and they pay out cash and digital asset prizes in the millions of dollars every week. They're both incredibly successful platforms. DraftKings is a multi-billion-dollar public company. Sorare is a company that in 3 years went from zero to over $4 billion in market cap as a private business, raising money from some of the most prominent players. And they've built very successful platforms. Although those games don't come anywhere near what we're building something much more sophisticated, much more immersive, much more Web3 focused. There are underlying components of their gameplay and our gameplay that are very similar. and that give us incredible confidence in terms of where this game can go. If you look at Sorare's trajectory, and maybe I'll do an AMA on that at one point. If you look at where they were at our point, we are ahead of them. And if you look at when they launched and when they hit their hockey stick, we're ahead of them on the curve. And I believe that we have the prospects of eclipsing whatever their success was, eclipsing it, at least for our market. They're not direct competitors, but they do operate in the same space. So that was a big impetus for us to really explore what are the successful companies out there in blockchain fantasy sports, what are they doing right, and what can we learn from them. And as a 5X entrepreneur, I can tell you that my success comes from surrounding myself with people that are as smart, if not smarter than me in their specific expertise, and relying on them for guidance. And I can say the same thing about companies that operate in peripheral spaces that have hit the ball out of the park. And so we want to learn from them, and we want to to borrow their best practices. Okay, that's the macro view of our economy. Now let's dig into a recap of what we're playing for, so that people have a better understanding. Again, I refer you to the AMA that I did a while ago that specifically talks to this, but I'm going to give you a few more granular data points that will help you understand this a little better. And I'm sure there will be questions around that, which I'm happy to answer. So let's start with the first thing. Our game is a unique game. What we're doing has never been done before. We are building a fantasy sports game that is delivered in an immersive Web3 environment that has never been done. We're delivering a fantasy sports game that is a dynasty game, meaning that it exists for the life of the players, and is built on the blockchain. That has never been done before. So when I say it's never been done before, you can play dynasty fantasy against a small group of people in football, baseball, basketball. You cannot play dynasty fantasy in a DFS game that involves a massive group of people. Our game is a massive multiplayer dynasty fantasy horse racing ownership game. Now that's a big mouthful to say, but that's what we are, and it's never been done before. So what we're doing is unique. The other thing that makes it even more unique is it's the first collaborative fantasy game ever to exist. Fantasy is a game that is not social. Unbeknownst to most players, nobody cares about your team. When you play fantasy football, you're competing against your friends, or you're competing against thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in DFS. And nobody really cares if you win or if you lose. In our game, there's an entire social component to the game. You can share ownership of a player, of a horse, with your friends, with online friends, offline friends, family. You can pool your winnings with other people from within the community and share in an emotional experience around gameplay and around the assets that you've invested in. That's never been done before. The way you share in traditional fantasy, when you play even these games, Rainmakers and Sorare, you're basically, you still have to share your card with other people, meaning that in Sorare, one player is produced 5,000 times. So 5,000 people can buy the same card, and in various versions. And in Rainmakers, they don't even limit the number. They just publish it as they publish the collections. In our game, there is a one-to-one relationship between each horse and an owner until that horse, or until and unless that horse is fractionalized and syndicated. And then whether or not that happens, you then have the stabling feature, which creates a shared ownership interest, a shared financial interest for a limited period of time in the winnings of the horses when you pool them. Again, that has never been done. Our game is tied to a real economy. So we have an in-game economy, every game does, and then there's a real-world economy, right? That's what makes us kind of a next-level fantasy game. Most, if not all, fantasy games have nothing to do with the real economy. When you're playing fantasy football, whether it's daily, seasonal, or dynasty, The real world's economy does not play into that game at all. In fact, it doesn't play into that game in any existing fantasy. We're the first fantasy game pegged to the real world economy. We intend to start 2023 at 1% of the real world US thoroughbred horse racing economy and grow it year over year. Okay? So we're committed to starting at 1%. Now, what does that mean? It means that 1% of whatever is paid out in the real world to our horses that are representing real world horses will get paid out for races won by owners of those horses. So if you own a horse that races in the real world next year, whatever that horse made, you will earn rewards equal to 1% of those winnings. We grow as an economy, as the community grows, as the value of our assets grow, as the revenue that comes in that drives the prize pools grow, our intention is to grow the parity to the real economy, meaning that in year one, we're starting at 1%. Year two will be at least 2%. Year three should be at least 3%. And then it's going to grow exponentially. We think conservatively we can grow this model to 5 or 6% in the first 5 years. And that if we exponentially grow and hit it out of the park, it can potentially be double that. And the numbers, as you can imagine, can get quite significant. In the modeling that we did, which is completely speculative and theoretical and cannot be relied on, we built a model that showed our ability to potentially get to 40% over a 10-year period. Do I think it's possible? Absolutely. Do I think it's possible that it doesn't happen? Absolutely as well. We don't know because it's never been done before. But what we do know is in a very short period of time, we've achieved incredible success and we've built an incredible community of very passionate people that have spoken with their money and told us they want to be a part of this, and it grows every day. And the industry is talking to us every day about wanting to do very special things with us, and we know that there's so much potential in what we're doing, and the sky is the limit. And we're being very conservative, and I'm being very conservative when I communicate with you to explain that, again, this is all speculative, but I can tell you where we're going to start and help you understand where we can get to. And this game, if it's as successful as we think it can be, is going to eclipse any fantasy game that's ever existed in this world. Okay, you can do the math, right? 1% of $1 billion is $10 million, right? Now, the $10 million would represent 1% of all the prize money being paid out. Obviously, we are not representing 100% of the horses racing, right? So 2-year-olds are not going to all race. A portion of those horses are going to race as 3-year-olds or as 4-year-olds. And not everybody that's in our world is going to win. And therefore, the amount that we anticipate paying out is substantially less than the 1% on an aggregate basis, but it will be 1% on a one-to-one basis. And that's the way you have to look at it. Our people ask about where are we getting the prize money to be able to fund the prize purses. And that is something I've explained in the past, but I'm going to explain it again. Every time we sell an asset, every time we generate revenue, every time we get royalties from the resale of the assets, that money is used to pay our operating costs, to pay our prizes out, and to create a profit for the business. Okay, in that order. So the first thing we have to do is pay out our operating costs to ensure that we've got a world-class platform operated by a world-class team to ensure that we all have an incredible experience in the metaverse playing this game. Second is to ensure that there is substantial and growing prize purses that are tracking the real world. And third, we're operating this business as a business for profit. So those are the three prongs in which the funds flow, and that is how we capitalize the business and how we grow the business and grow the prize pool. As our revenue grows, so does the value of the prize money, so does the size of the economy of the game. I will say that we intend to raise additional capital to provide us with a cushion and potentially accelerate the growth of the economy. Um, when you look at Rainmaker, so DraftKings is, along with FanDuel, are two of the largest players. They're the 800-pound gorillas in fantasy sports, in daily fantasy sports. When DraftKings announced Rainmakers at the beginning of this football season, they actually pre-funded the platform with about, I think they said $30 million. So basically, they put up the prize money in advance of knowing how many of these tokens they were going to sell and how many people were going to play the game. And our intention is to provide, to go out, and as this game continues to grow, to provide additional accelerants to allow us to grow the game and grow the economy faster than it will grow organically if we stimulate it this way. So that is something on our roadmap. And the more successful we are, the faster we can grow the economy. Let me drop down a little bit to the microeconomics of the mint, because this is incredibly relevant to what's about to happen. So those of you that participated in the official mint, which was a 4-day mint, where you were able to buy an unrevealed yearling for $500, or the ETH equivalent of $500, you should understand exactly what the economics are associated with that, and I'm going to go through it right now. So, how risky is buying one of these $500 yearlings? Well, your horse may never race, right? Your horse may not race as a 2-year-old, it may not race as a 3-year-old, and then, they may try to train it, but it never races. And you could, in that scenario, if you hold that horse for the entire life, useful life of that horse in its racing career, and it's a male horse, its value, I can assure you, will go to close to zero, if not zero. Okay? However, you're buying an asset that has a theoretical life of up to 25 years and a racing career, according to the statistics that the Jockey Club publishes. An average registered thoroughbred racehorse will start 6 times a year and have a average lifetime start of 24 times, which means that you can expect your horse to race on average 24 times over the course of their life. If they're starting 6 times a year, that means that they'll race on average for 4 years. From being a 2-year-old, that means that they'll retire at 6 years old. That's data that comes from the Jockey Club. It doesn't come from me. I'm not making that data up. Now, if you look at what a horse would need to make in order for you to break even, okay, in year 1, that horse would need to win $50,000. In year 2, that horse would have to win $25,000. In year 3, $16,500, or in year 4, a race that pays $12,500. Assuming that we hit we track our economy on a percentage basis to the real economy in the way I described it, which basically means over the racing career of your horse, if it wins one race, just one race, over the course of its life, you will likely break even. Those are the economics, okay? So, if in year 1 it wins a $50,000 race, you're basically breaking even. If it wins in year 2 a $25,000 race, and so on and so forth, based on the economics that we're forecasting, you should break even. So that's basically, they have to win 1 out of 24 races, assuming they race 24 times, or they can come in 2nd or 3rd place in the outer years and still achieve the same goal. But I want you to think about those odds when you think about a horse. And remember, a horse, the yearling, nobody, we talk about good horses and bad horses. I hear it all the time. There's no such thing as a bad horse in our catalog. They've all been sold at prominent auction houses, and any one of them can race in the Kentucky Derby. Any one of them can become a champion. Nobody knows. If everybody knew, these horses would sell for a lot more money. Just like nobody knows, which company is going to be the next big, company on Wall Street. It's the same thing. Like, Nobody really knows. People guess. There are experts. Obviously, skill plays a big factor here, but there's also a lot of luck and there's also a lot of uncertainty. So when you get your horses, remember that. I can guarantee you that we are going to see transactions in which horses are dumped on the market for below what the owners paid for them. And one day there will be horses that were sold for hundreds of dollars that in our game could be worth tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. That will happen, just like it happens in the real world. Rich Strike was sold for $30,000 6 months before he raced in the Kentucky Derby. And he was offered $30 million the day he won to the owner. Okay? Why didn't all the experts in the game buy that horse? Because nobody knows. And that exact same thing is going to happen in our game, and it's going to happen many, many times every year. Let's keep going. The Kentucky Derby. There are approximately 20 male horses that are selected for the Kentucky Derby each year, usually male horses. Okay? This year's crop of yearlings was projected to be 17,500 bred and born yearlings. Approximately half of them are male, so that's 8,750. Okay? If 20 of them are going to race in the Kentucky Derby as 3-year-olds, then 20 over 8,750 is 1 in 437. Okay? So if you buy a male horse that's a 2-year-old, you have a 1 in 437 chance that that horse will race in the Kentucky Derby. I just want you to kind of digest that. These are not lottery ticket odds. These are pretty good odds. Stallions. We talked about them in my deep dive on the economy. I'm going to bring it up again. Approximately 25 stallions, 25 male horses will become stallions from this crop at some point in their lives. Remember that stallions are limited. There are about 250 stallions that sire the majority of yearlings, and that those stallions have a definitive life cycle. So as they get older, they retire and have to be replaced by new champions. Each year, we predict between 20 and 25 new stallions will come out of this crop, which means that there are people in this community, on this AMA, that will end up minting a future stallion. Those stallions have the potential, if our economy operates the way we think it can operate, to generate millions of dollars over the course of their life. I can also tell you that it is unlikely that somebody is going to mint a stallion and hold that stallion throughout their entire life, because the value of that asset is going to grow and grow and grow as it becomes apparent that this is a horse that's going to become a sire. And just like when people talk about Bitcoin and they say, oh, I got in at $200, it doesn't matter when you got into Bitcoin. The question is, did you have the guts to hold it till it was $60,000? And most people didn't. Most people, when they see an opportunity to take a profit, they do. And so everybody has their threshold, and we're going to see the same volatility and the same activity in our game. And so when you look at it, yes, there are going to be people that are going to mint a $500 asset that's going to turn into potentially millions of dollars of value. But it's unlikely that they're going to hold it throughout that period. They might syndicate pieces of it, and they might get out of it at a point where they feel like, you know what, that's enough. I don't want to hold it. You know, I just made $20,000 or whatever the number is. I'm happy. And we're going to see a lot of that. So we expect these assets to change hands quite significantly over time. Those are stallions. On the broodmare side, we project about 1,200 broodmares will rise out of each crop to replace the retiring broodmares on the other side of the spectrum. And that's about 15% of the female crop. Broodmares, based on our modeling, theoretical modeling, and again, you can't rely on any of this, but the theoretical modeling around the game shows that they could produce value of 30 to 60 times their value over the course of their life, just foaling a single horse during the years that they can foal. So those are going to become very valuable as well. And the decision to, to stable, to own a female or a male is going to have a lot of impact as well, right? So male horses that don't become stallions have very little value beyond their racing career, whereas female horses have a lot of value. You need 20,000 females to breed 20,000 foals. And so, the trade-off is very different. If you get a male breeder, you can breed hundreds of horses a year. If you get a female breeder, you can only breed one horse a year. So very different economics, but also very different risk. Remember, this is a game of a lifetime. This is the first massive multiplayer dynasty fantasy sports game ever, which means that when you buy into this game, you could be playing this game for your entire life. And certainly the assets will survive the life, will exist throughout the productive life of these animals. They may not perform in their first year. They may not perform in their second year. I invite you to look at the analogy with traditional sports, and because I'm a football fan, a professional football fan, I'm just going to use that as an analog. When you draft a player to your team in a dynasty game, you own that player theoretically. That player may be the best rookie, the number one pick, and they may not even start their first year. They may not start their second year. And all of a sudden, they're a quarterback. The first string quarterback was injured, and now they get an opportunity. That's how the greatest quarterbacks of all time come into the game. They sit on the bench, and then one day out of nowhere, they get their chance, they perform, and all of a sudden, they're superstars. The same thing is going to happen with horses. You might get a horse and say, this is a donkey. And it might not race. The owner may decide, I'm not racing it my second year. Or it may race it as a 2-year-old, and it may not perform. Come the third year, something happens. They've learned more about the horse. They've learned about the conditions the horse is good at running in, the type of races it should be entered into. They modify the program, and all of a sudden this horse comes out of the gate and becomes a superstar. They may, horses go through a lot of different things that change the trainers, change the owners, geld the male horses. Lots of change the tracks they run on, change the type of races they're in. There's so many variables you're going to learn about if you don't already know. And I can guarantee you that people that understand the assets that they hold and have the patience to understand that they need to develop their knowledge around these horses and watch how the horses are being trained and being developed in the real world, it's going to have a lot of value for them. Some people are just not going to want to wait. They're going to say, you know what, my horse isn't racing this year. I'm going to sell this one and I'm going to buy a horse that's active. That may very well happen. But remember that the first, when you get your horses, you're going to look at the data. It's going to tell you something about the horse, but nobody really knows. Nobody knows. It's likely that if you get a horse that's sold for 7 figures, that they're a good candidate if they're male, for being a stallion. That's typically why those horses sell for millions of dollars. And that will translate into huge value within the game. But those horses may never win a race. They're just built in a way where people want them to breed to. So there's so much that we can talk about. I just want to prepare everybody for what's coming and let everybody understand this is a long game that's going to, and the beauty of this game is that while we're playing this game, there are so many variables that are hitting us that are going to create a lot of excitement even before the horses ever race, and even while the horses are racing, and even once the horse have retired and start breeding. Once your horse starts breeding, we don't even know the value of the offspring until they start racing and seeing whether or not they're productive. They might have your number one stallion might produce its first crop of horses that absolutely suck at racing, and their breeding fees are going to go down in value. And then they're going to figure out, we're breeding to the wrong mares. Let's breed to these bloodlines. And all of a sudden they breed to these bloodlines, and the next crop comes out and they're killing it. And then all of a sudden the value of that stallion goes through the moon, and the value of the offspring go through the moon. So We don't know, but what we do know is there is a lot of volatility that's going to make for a really great game for all of us. In conclusion, and I'm going to wrap it up. I know I've kind of gone a little over time over here, but remember that there is going to be huge price volatility across all of our assets for a lot of reasons. There are so many ways to play this game. You can play this game and have a lot of fun never owning a horse, owning land, speculating on land, developing farms, creating syndications, turning your farms into businesses that involve stabling, selling of horses, syndicating of horses, and there's a lot on our roadmap as we develop this game. There are truly endless twists and turns that are going to create for incredible gameplay, and I can just share that, we have on our roadmap, rewarding stables based on their performance. Everything is transparent, right? So if you own a farm that has 50 horses in it, there may be a category you're competing with against other farms, and we're going to reward the owners of those farms that are performing. We'll have contests between owners, contests between farms, contests between syndication groups, lots of layers of activity that we can bring into the game over time. We don't want to complicate it in the beginning, but we have a roadmap with a lot of exciting ways to play the game and create engagement at all levels, whether you choose to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars into this game or hundreds of dollars into this game. There will be something for everybody. And with that, I'm done with this AMA and happy to open up for questions for 15 or 20 minutes. So I'll turn it back over to Ben and Squid. Absolutely. We're a privately held company funded by outside investors, and we are as transparent as we can possibly be, and we will continue to be transparent. But that is not a standard practice for any company, whether you're operating inside of Web3 or outside of Web3. The only time that you would, the only transparency, even in a DAO, would be the DAO treasury. And I've been very transparent about our revenue, about our secondary market. Every AMA that I come up on, I report on financials, which I don't have to, but we do because we want to be completely transparent with the community. So hopefully that answers the question.
Going great. Yeah, it is good afternoon almost everywhere, I think, except for maybe Chopper. Anyway, thank you very much. Great AMA, a lot of information. Someday I would sit down with you and maybe talk to you a little bit about some of your numbers. Some of them are getting better, but we could talk sometime. Anyway, in general, great. One question, maybe not applicable here, but I don't suppose there's any possibility that you could give me an ABC of how we're going to progress with this reveal. So, because I don't have any idea at all.
Can you clarify your question when you say, what are you progressing?
Okay, we're going to reveal horses. Am I supposed to take them out of my Nano, put them in MetaMask and hang them out and open? I don't know. I'm not understanding.
Okay, so I'll explain it. Beginning tomorrow, and I believe the time is 5 o'clock in the afternoon, East Coast time, you will be able to, we refer to it as revealing, but from a lore...
Sorry, what did I say?
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, what did I say?
Mint? Did I say mint? You said reveal.
Oh, okay.
What's actually happening technically is you're taking one token, burning it, and getting a different token that is the actual token of the horse. From our perspective, we are delivering the actual horse to you, the actual yearling to you. If the metaverse was live right now, you would actually see that horse delivered to your farm and appear in your stable. and that will actually be there in 5 weeks when you go to your farm. If you have a farm, you will actually be able to interact with your horse. We're delivering it to you beginning at 5 o'clock tomorrow East Coast time. All you have to do is connect your wallet to our website, and the instructions will be in announcements. And you will effectively be doing an activity that feels like minting, but there will be no money involved other than, I believe, that whatever the gas fees are associated with transferring the asset to your wallet. Once you get your yearling, you will know what you have. It will give you a lot of information on it, and you'll have the tools necessary to be able to go out, or the information necessary to go out and begin researching what you have. And in about 5 weeks from now, you'll actually that horse will actually be a physical three-dimensional object or virtual three-dimensional object that will appear as an asset within the world that you own.
Okay, so you're saying that I need to connect to Silks.io or OpenSea?
No. You will connect through Silks.io. You will get information tonight, I believe, or an email will go out tomorrow, and there will be an announcement in the community that will give you all the instructions you need to take delivery of your horse. You'll be able to do it tomorrow, but there's absolutely no rush. You can take all the time you want to reveal it. Everybody reveals it at their time. Because this is a delivery, rather than doing a mass reveal, we let people reveal them as they want to. You can keep horses unrevealed if you choose to. That's totally up to you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hey, how are you? Great AMA. Quick question, just a follow-up actually to a previous AMA. Has there been any more discussion about the randomization of the yearling reveal? For example, there's 18,000 or so yearlings this year. Are our tokens going to be concentrated in the top 3,000 of that 8,000, or is it going to be randomized across the entire pool of 18,000?
So it's a good question, Riles. I've actually spoken about it before, but I'll recap it for the audience and for your benefit. The catalog that we published, which is on our website and updated in real time, represents the yearlings that will be delivered. They represent approximately 70 some odd hundred of the 17,500 official yearlings that were registered and that are confirmed to be alive by the Jockey Club. The balance of yearlings that are not in our collection are yearlings that were either held by the original breeders or transferred in a private sale. Those horses will come available and be on our platform when they become available to us. We can't tell you exactly when that will be, but it should be fairly soon. And we will publish lists of those horses as they become available, meaning that when horses become available through private transactions, we will either auction them off or we will push them right up to the marketplace. And before we do either of those things, the community will be alerted and you'll be given a catalog of all the new additions.
Got it. So the reveal tomorrow will be from that 7,700.
That's correct. And that 70 some odd hundred are horses that were sold at auction or offered at auction through the most prominent auction houses in this country, which is a massive filter for quality, which means they wouldn't take horses that are unsaleable. And typically, an owner that wants to sell a prime horse will sell through auction. Now, having said that, there are going to be a ton of high quality, high prospect horses that never went through auction.
Sure.
Those horses will be available to this community as they become available to the game.
So by going through auction, the 7,700 in the catalog, the Silks catalog, have some basic inherent value based on what the racing community thinks they may or may not be.
Exactly. So, for example, if you end up pulling a horse that sold for $500,000 at auction, you can be certain that that horse has, at least in the perception of the horse racing community, a very high value, like a very high
Sure.
prospect of being a successful racehorse. And if you look at some of the sires today and look back at what they were sold for as yearlings, most of them were sold for a lot of money. And that's the benefit of owning an Avatar is you get to mint out of that collection before it goes to the public.
Sure. Is there any negativity of moving, once you reveal these horses, moving them to a cold wallet?
Is there any negativity? So I'm not gonna. What I'm gonna say is, on its face, no.
Mhm.
But I will have. I'm gonna take a note, and in a future AMA, to the extent that there's any implications that are relevant to the community, we'll let you know. But at this point, I'm gonna say no,
Okay.
because we're gonna remember that starting when these horses race and when prize money is distributed, it's going to go. It's literally going to look at the wallet the horse is sitting in, and automatically transfer the rewards to those wallets.
Got it. Of course, there's an extra layer of security involved around having your assets sit in a hot
Absolutely.
wallet. Cold
Absolutely.
wallet. If you have
Absolutely.
a high value horse, you might not want to leave it in a hot wallet. So
Correct, but typically your ledger is associated with a MetaMask wallet that can get receive deposits even though they can't grab your assets.
okay. Perfect.
But I'm going to defer. I'll defer to our head of technology, Michael Lira, and have him either publish something or talk about it on the next AMA.
That would be great if you could do that.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Don.
You're welcome.
Hey guys,
Hey.
sorry for I apologize in advance for the background noise I've got going on here, but I was wondering, we discussed a little bit some ideas around the auction and how it might progress. Any more details on that, on how that will be put out, or how maybe after the 31st of December, the rest of the horses may be made available to the community at that point?
Can I repeat? I'm going to repeat your question just to make sure I got it right. You're asking me if I can provide more information of how the rest of the horses beyond the catalog will make it into the community?
I'm really speaking more towards the horses that aren't minted, that are remaining unminted after December 31st.
Okay. I got it. So, G-Home, what will happen is after December 31st, whatever horses from our catalog are unminted, right? And the only way they go unminted is if there are avatars that did not use their season pass to mint, right? Their 2022 mint pass. And that could be either because we have unsold avatars or there are avatars that just the owners never use that pass. If that happens, and we expect that it very well might happen, although it's unlikely, the balance of whatever remains from the mint will be revealed, pushed up to auction, and whatever doesn't sell at auction will just be pushed into the marketplace.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Yep. Remember, the beauty of this game is that these horses don't have to sell day one. They can sell in a month, they could sell in 6 months, they could sell in a year. And I'm fairly certain that as this game evolves, that every week there are going to be 1,000 horses that are racing in this country, and of those 1,000 horses, there are going to be hundreds that may be sitting in the marketplace that people are going to scoop up the week before those horses are racing, and that's going to create a lot of activity. It's the same way the game is played in Rainmakers and in Sorare. People they want to set up lineups with the best players that week, and I can imagine that a lot of people within the community will be like, I want to own that horse. It's racing in a major race in 3 days. It could win thousands of dollars for me. If I can buy it on the cheap, I will. And so we're going to see a lot of stimulation in the marketplace from a transactional perspective based on that fact. Yeah, I think that I'm just super excited for us to be at this point. I think that tomorrow is a turning point for us. In terms of, I hope I gave everybody a lot of information that's useful to them. We're going to continue to publish content and to continue to speak in these AMAs, answer questions, educate, etc. As we have, I'm going to tease the audience again and say that lots of exciting stuff in the pipeline, not ready for prime time yet, but as they become available and ready for us to share, we will do that. I expect that the clarity around, how we're funding the project and the stability of the platform, if it isn't already clear to everybody, will become even more clear in the coming weeks with some pretty significant announcements. So I appreciate you guys taking the time. We all appreciate the support of the project. We're all invested in this alongside everybody here, both in terms of our individual capital and our time. But there isn't a single person on this team that hasn't personally bought assets and isn't engaged in playing this game. We're all passionate about this. We're all excited. Our interests are all completely aligned, and we can't wait for the game to begin. So excited to be here and speak to all of you today, and look forward to speaking to you in the coming weeks. And it'll probably be sooner rather than later. So with that, I wish you all a great day, and look forward to speaking soon. Thank you.